I just got an email, Anne Ryan, from you, from Ireland. I have that right, huh?
Yes, Ireland, Gary.
Ireland, okay. And you raised an interesting point. We had a little Skype conversation after that, and you raised an interesting point, which I would like to discuss so that others can benefit from it. And that is the whole idea about having these spiritual experiences or growing in our spiritual sense, if you will, using the unseen therapist and so on. And you personally have not had one of these wow experiences like I have, where all of a sudden, the whole world vanishes and I'm in the arms of the Creator, and it's just, what is this? And it's just so exquisite. There's no words for it, etc. You haven't had that, right?
No, I haven't had that, Gary.
Okay. As it turns out, most people haven't had it. And what people tend to do sometimes is they'll write me or call me or something, and they'll say, well, Gary, I haven't had your experience, therefore, maybe I'm not doing it right, or I'll never get the unseen therapist, or something like that. You've got a different view. Fire away.
Okay, so I've been pondering on some of this recently, and I suppose looking at my own process and my own journey, and I wonder now, do some people have that instantaneous, dramatic, whoa, like you describe and like other people write about? And that for others of us, is it a really gradual coming to? Mm-hmm. And the metaphor that I have in my mind, how I see it is, it's like some people, particularly children who will normally jump out of bed in the morning, but some children will wake up, eyes ping open, and whoa, out. Day started, out of bed. And others will spend 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, just waking up to the day. And I kind of just draw the parallel there between those that like, wow, have what you describe and what others have written about. And then those of us that just slowly, sometimes not even noticing that we're sort of a little bit more awake, a little bit more conscious, a little bit more something. And that it just happens so gradually and so gently and so subtly that in some ways one could miss it. And in another way, sometimes there's something that happens in day-to-day life. It's like, wow, okay, I didn't do my normal dramatic thing about that.
I was a little calmer when Uncle Charlie said whatever he said and so on. Yeah, and actually, that more slow, more subtle thing is a very, very powerful thing, but yet we tend not to notice it because we sort of get used to it. It happens a little bit at a time. And then someday you're in some kind of an argument or a debate or in some kind of a stressful circumstance, and you just respond much more calmly. Or if you get to the point where you're coming out of your shoes and you're a little upset about something, it doesn't last very long. You catch yourself. This is not going anywhere, and you're a little quieter. The way you respond to your children, the way you respond to your spouse, the way you respond to your people in your workplace, and so on. Even with competitors and all of this, just sort of is different, and actually dramatically different. If we could flip a switch from a year ago to today, it would be a dramatic shift.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's we the word respond is lovely. We respond rather than react. I think that's responding is that there's something very gentle and very there's a movement in it, whereas a reaction is like reflex. It's just out there. It's that's the difference, and less drama. That would be my word. There's less drama.
Well, I'm going to tell you the same story I told you a bit ago when we were on Skype. But I want to emphasize the point that just because one has not had a wow experience does not mean the unseen therapist isn't there doing her job, et cetera, et cetera. sometimes it just needs to unfold more slowly. So let me recount this story here for those listening in and so on. I had a call last night from a gentleman who called me. He was irritated, and he said, Gary, I've read your book, The Unseen Therapist, and I've worked on it on my anger issue that I've had. I'm 82 now, he says, and this anger issue has been with me since I was a child because I was abused as a child. And I'm angry about it. I'm still angry about it. And I've done all the EFT tapping, and I've worked with people that are supposed to be experts and all of that. And nothing works, nothing works, nothing works, nothing works, you know. And he was actually sort of angry at me because I represented all these things that nothing worked. Okay? So I'm listening to him. Now, the important thing is, if I had had this conversation 5 years ago, my reaction would have been, well, okay, well, let's debate some of this now. Okay, I wrote this book, and you know, and did you read chapter 4 or whatever? I mean, it says, did you do that? You know, and maybe politely, but nonetheless, still argue with him, debate, etc., stand toe to toe in some fashion. That would have been my reaction, but it wasn't my reaction last night. I listened. I could hear his anger. I didn't get plugged into it at all. In fact, my mindset was, as I was listening to him, was, well, he's just not ready yet. And that's not a criticism. It just, the fact is, he's not ready yet. But I did do this, and this is important to expand upon here. I said, Dave, I get, you know, that you've got all this frustration and nothing has worked for you. Nothing. But let me ask you a question. If there was a benefit for having your anger, what could it be? And to my surprise, he was kind of quiet about that and was actually thinking about this, okay? And what he said to me was, Gary, I think what's happening is, as long as I can be angry, I am going to protect myself from ever being abused again. Now, Anne, is that logical?
No, it's not logical.
Okay. But do you see how somebody could say to themselves, as long as I'm angry, nobody's going to get close enough to me to ever abuse me again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, not logical, and we could even argue perverse. We could, okay. But we do those things. We're human. We do those kinds of things. And for him, that's the only way that he knows of to be able to keep the abuse away, even though it's illogical. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I've said with some frequency about the unseen therapist is she will not interfere with our free will to believe as we choose to believe. She will not do anything, for example, to increase fear. So if we're calling on unseen therapist to take care of all these anger issues, and in fact that's going to cause him to retreat back into some form of fear, he's going to be abused again, even though illogical. It's going to increase his fear. Oh, we got a problem, okay? We think we've solved the problem, but in another sense, we've exaggerated it. Yes, no?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So, this is where the real skills with optimal EFT and unseen therapists come in, because we can still help this man, but what we need to do is be, as I've said many times, assistance to the unseen therapist. We need to counsel with this fellow, and we need to take his illogical fear, reframe it, and that's where skill and experience comes in. Reframe it so we dilute it a little bit here, and we dilute it a little bit there, and we start putting stuff on the table in plain sight for unseen therapists, stuff that isn't hidden anymore now, okay? It's on plain sight. And there's a skill in that. That's what our Optimal EFT course membership is all about, and so on, so we can develop, you know, all of these all of these skills. And so then, okay. So, but this fellow is not unique to the world. There are lots of people sitting in wheelchairs, for example, with this kind of disease, that kind of ailment, etc., who at some level want the disease. Do you have? I'm asking you out of the blue, but can you think of examples of that?
I can think of somebody that I've worked with who has got pretty severe anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just despite a number of sessions, despite working from many angles and being really gentle,
mm-hmm.
there's very little shift. Very, very little shift. Okay. And there was probably a first session where things really melted, and then somehow a shutter went up. And the sentence is, this worked the first time, this isn't working. Okay. But it's yeah.
Okay. And behind that somewhere, this is my experience. In fact, I have had very challenging cases where we got great results, and other times we just hit this wall, okay? Yeah. And we need to know why. Why does it work in this case, and over here we've got this wall? And it's because there's some benefit, there is some reason, there is some value in this ailment to the person. Maybe if they're sitting in a wheelchair, for example, they get love and attention they wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah.
Happens a lot. Maybe if they have a lot of anxiety, they can complain a lot and get attention in that way. Mm. Maybe if, like my friend with all the anger, if I'm always anxious, that keeps people away from me because they don't want to be around somebody so anxious, and therefore I can stay inside my shell. Mm. Okay? I'm making some of this up. But this is the kind of thing that goes on. So I think it's really, really important that we recognize that when nothing seems to be happening, even though we're dealing with a power that can take care of anything, the unseen therapist, the person themselves is blocking the healing. Now, I've got to back up a second, because that's a very age-old excuse kind of thing. The doctor would say, okay, I've given you the pills, but it doesn't work because you just don't want to get better. Mm. And it almost blames the client, even though there may be some truth to it. But we want to get it out of blaming the client to understanding the client. Because you and I do the same things in our own way. We may not be aware of them, but we're doing some of this in our own way. We have ways of protecting ourselves and so on. Anyway, we go on and on. But you got any thoughts on that, Anne?
The one thought, I mean, at the end of the day, when I meet that, I just see behind whatever we're looking at, whether it's a physical thing or whether it's some emotional anger or anxiety, behind that there is this really, really, really scared person, part, child, whatever. That's, and to me, that's the bit that we can really soften and reassure and work with, just that scared part.
Yeah.
Before we go to any event, and when that piece that is just so scared to let it go, because that's how I see it, is it's just really, really, really scared and frightened, even though that's not what we might see on the outside. When we can just develop something there, like, it is amazing how gently work can be done, and it doesn't even seem like anything has the client hasn't realized, wow, we've actually gone to this issue and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And it's lovely when that happens.
Yeah, and it's very fulfilling. And lovely is a great term, because that's part of, like what we were talking about earlier, that's part of this gradual getting into these spiritual experiences. Because this is a spiritual experience by itself, as you move somebody from this big fear place to, oh, it's okay place. It may happen seemingly gradually, but boy, when you're there, that's a big light switch.
Yeah.
It's a wow. It just took a while to get there.
Exactly, yeah.
Anything else to add, Anne?
No, that's lovely.
Okay. All right. Thanks so
Thanks.
much.
Thanks,
All right.
Gary.